mostly. There, I mean, because he still improved in Texas despite losing. I think he probably had a net loss of counties in Texas, but those counties he lost are in South Texas. That's where the heavy Latino population, um, and it just you I just I remember when none of Maine was really in contention, at least that's how I remember it. But now you have, because of this huge urban-rural divide, which I think is actually starting to rival the racial and gender divides.
Hmm.
Uh, you have Georgia. It's that has, I want to say, three metros, with Atlanta obviously being the biggest one, most influential one. Uh, Rural counties, I think, are losing population, and that's kind of something that you see in most states. But
One sec. Okay, you're basically saying that Biden was like losing the rural centers.
yeah, I mean, and there was like no improvement from Hillary.
Yeah.
Actually, Maine's second district. What's weird is Obama won Maine's second congressional district by pretty wide margins. Both his races. George Bush didn't carry Maine second, and then Trump carries it by like flips to 10 points for Trump in 2016, and it was a little closer this time, but he still won it by a fairly comfortable margin. Um, Meanwhile, Georgia and Arizona, you know, they voted Republican in the last, since 1996 or 1992, and now they're blue states. So, I'd say I'm most interested though in whether this coalition that Trump kind of built to actually swing Florida to the Republicans, and keep Texas in part by flipping those Rio Grande Valley counties is, can he continue to, and this is not something I thought I'd ever see, but can he actually continue to keep Hispanics or Cubans and rural Hispanics in Texas?
Um, well, I think that the rural people are like very distrust, um, distrusting of like anything that they consider like very mainstream at this point. Um, Anyone that they figure is like part of the system. So like it kind of makes sense that if Hillary didn't do well in certain maybe rural areas, that Biden didn't do well in those areas as well. And that Trump, I don't know, the issue with Trump doing well with non-whites is I feel like people have gotten to a certain amount of cynicism. It's like kind of crescendo to where the system is on trial, even if people don't know exactly what it is. And so people don't realize who Trump really is or what he represents. So if he's considered an outsider, he benefits from people being cynicism of like, the mainstream Wall Street, too big to fail, status quo position that Biden kind of represents.
Yeah, but I just don't. Well, I don't understand why would uh, white voters swing towards buying then? I mean,
I
those
think,
were wealthy suburbanites.
yeah, well, I think you're seeing uh, a mix of people who are just scared of Trump, like people who actually realize that Trump is a maniac, and people who are at least smart enough to realize that. So I think the Biden vote is the safe go-to vote for everyone from centrists to people who don't consider themselves like racist, misogynist assholes. Um, don't want to vote for Trump. That's like considering the choices. It certainly makes sense. So I think some of the white people who voted for Trump probably realized their mistake and decided to vote for Biden. Maybe some of the people who stayed out last time were motivated enough to vote against Trump that some of those people came to the polls, right? Because even when we mention how many white people voted for Trump and how many black people voted for Trump, we still have this huge section of the population that just doesn't vote anyway. So maybe some of
What's
those
most
people,
of it?
yeah, most of it. So maybe some of those people were motivated by like this maniac to vote, and then certainly progressive organizations like um, the one I work for, Working Families, and then the Democrats and DSA, like a lot of these groups just put a ton of energy into this election that this was going to be like a do or die sort of moment. So, you know,
Yeah, and I feel like I know how much we should really read into this one election, especially given that 2020 in general is such a deviation from the norm. Um, I'm sure that includes elections, but how much can Trump's last minute surge, I guess you could call it, be attributed to what arguably helped some Republicans in 2018, which was the Supreme Court? Um, you
yeah.
know, I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about weighing that against COVID
Hmm.
and the Black Lives Matter protests, and you know, uh, obviously, I don't believe that you know I don't believe that Black Lives Matter really swung any voters because of the racial trends, basically doing the reverse of what one would expect. I mean, that's what um, some on the left that I know were fearing was that the rioting would cost Biden the election, and I just don't think that had much to do with anything. But there was increased turnout from both sides. I mean, I haven't actually looked at the raw numbers yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if Trump actually did. He built on his raw vote numbers even as Biden won.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's interesting. So the issue with the votes is, you pull votes from somewhere and then you push votes elsewhere, right? So, I mean, the law and order crowd can kind of whip up a frenzy and maybe get some people to decide they don't like where this country is going, like the racist, um, low information voter types. But at the same time, I mean, progressive organizations were definitely pushing defund and, pushing like the left getting its shit together and actually coming together instead of being so splintered to
Mm.
get things done and get Trump out. So, I mean, you have some votes, but you have some people who just threw their hands up in the air and said, I don't like either candidate. Voting sucks. And, they just couldn't be bothered. But then you had some people who were like, I'm definitely going to vote this guy out of office. And some of those were, some hardcore left folks. Some of the really hardcore left folks had to be pushed though, because they were just like, well, I don't want to vote for Biden. That's not who I actually like. But some of them, you know, could be pushed to be pragmatists or at least use strategy on their behalf and say, let's at least put the better person in there and then fight like hell to get our agenda addressed for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think that the left of the Democratic Party was actually very good on this because you know you take a look at someone look at Ed Markey, look at his record. He's voted for some pretty crappy stuff. Voted for the Iraq War, I think the Patriot Act, and probably the crime bill. Um,
And who is this?
Ed Markey from
Okay.
Massachusetts,
Okay.
and yet the left backed him, over Joe Kennedy III. And Joe Kennedy III was cast as like a Pete Buttigieg empty suit. Didn't really have a reason to run. He just needed that seat because of his last name.
Hmm.
Um, and there wasn't they did campaign on any different policies, yet it was pretty clear that the moderates or at least I should say online, the moderates were more drawn to Kennedy, just out of distaste for the so-called Bernie Bros.
Hmm.
Uh, but what's interesting is, I'm talking specifically about online culture, of course, but you look at the House endorsements for Kennedy, and that includes, um, some conservative Democrats like Kirsten Sinema, but that also includes Mark Pocan and I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Raul Grijalva from
Hmm.
two very progressive congressmen. Meanwhile, Joe Manchin endorses Markey. He's the most conservative Democrat in the Senate, and he endorses Markey in the primary.
Hmm.
So that I do have some doubt as to how much ideology played a role in that primary. However, I do believe that because all of the Bernie energy was, at least online, was behind Markey, that shows that the left is willing to play ball, even with people who do have problematic records.
Yeah.
Um, just as long as that candidate, be it Markey or Biden or whoever, is willing to accommodate the left,
Hmm.
because the left obviously deserves, as a vote is a vote, they deserve as much credit for Biden's victory as the people who supported him, or in the primary.
Right.
Um, but if this election taught me anything, it's that the internet is not real life, because Biden had the smallest. I mean, this is obviously my subjective opinion, but Biden had the smallest online presence. I feel like Buttigieg had a strong, online fan base. Even there were more Klobuchar supporters I saw, I think, than Biden supporters. I mean, they were just not. They just weren't there except on election day, when there were, I think you could argue at least 10 better candidates for Biden, uh, even those who occupy his same ideological, moderate lane, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you think that would be different if people could actually vote online? Like, people who are engaged, or it's just like a separate community of, those who talk and engage online and those who actually flex their vote?
I think that engagement has a little bit to do with it, because I've noticed a tendency among people, both those who are very conservative and those who are very, I don't want to say liberal, but very, very left wing. The Those who occupy, I don't want to say the extremes, but who are more, you know, distanced from the center, are more
Hmm.
likely to feel, like their voice doesn't matter, because they actually, they think about politics more than anyone else.
Yeah.
But Um, they're the most opinionated, obviously. Um,
And you
and
feel those people are more likely to vote, the ones that are more opinionated, or more on the flanks, or more on the fringe.
I think conventional wisdom would say yes, but
Yeah.
um, a lot of them don't vote just because they lack faith in the democratic system or the candidates.
Yeah.
Those who are more opinionated, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
are also more likely to say, screw this, my vote doesn't count.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
so it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it depends on how far left you go. I mean, I guess if you go left enough that you're, technically an anarchist, or technically, too radical for the system itself, then I guess you're probably not going to vote. But I think there are a lot of people on the left who are in still in the engagement part of the further to the left, who, like, they are, all about um, you know, knocking on doors and getting involved in politics and working phone banks and organizing, their friends and neighbors, and those people can affect the election.
Yeah, I think where the hell were Biden's supporters online? Why did why did the establishment want Biden when there were candidates who were younger, um, female, Amy Klobuchar? Why didn't they back her? Why not? I mean, Buttigieg did get actually quite an large online following, I think. Um, but then you look at his actual results, and Buttigieg, I mean, he did very well in Iowa and New Hampshire,
Hmm.
uh, but that's about it. Everywhere else he bombed, and then he drops out to endorse Biden. Same, pretty much the same day as Amy Klobuchar. Gee, I wonder why. Sorry, right after South Carolina, because they didn't want to split the moderate vote, I guess, and help you. Well, I was about to say either Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but Warren, um, if anything, I mean, I'm talking about like a million different things at once, but Warren, I think some surveys showed that her voters was 50-50 um, for Sanders and Biden, but I don't know. It just I feel like it's kind of meaningless. It's hopeless to really predict these elections going forward,
Hmm.
um, unless we just take all. What I'd like to do is take all of 2020 as a huge um, abnormality.
Well, yeah. The other thing is using uh, using an online presence. It's too small it's too small of an indicator, because, like, doing phone banking, you're speaking to a lot of people who vote. Like, the older, you know how it is, like, the older people are, the more likely they are to vote, the less likely they're online. So that kind of throws, that, like, right out of the window. Or it's only a specific range of people that you're targeting, right? You're going to get those people who are dedicated voters, who are over 50, who are just not engaging online, but they're definitely going to vote. And these are people, like some of the old people I spoke to, including people who would not do a mail in because they're very traditional. They're like, I don't care if I have to stand in line for 8 hours. Like, I'm going to stand in line and I'm going to vote. Right. So you got those people. So the older you get, like, the more stubborn and the more likely and the more traditional they're sticking to their traditional ways of engaging. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, you know, seniors are less likely to be net savvy or tech savvy. They're more likely to distrust technology or just not understand it.
Yeah, yeah, not even know how to use it. Yep.
Yeah, but I I just don't see why most of these well I can't say most of but a lot of these younger people on Twitter who support Bernie Sanders, why where did they actually vote? How many of them actually took the time to go out and do something that's it's not the sexiest thing in the world to vote like you're working with the system, so to speak. You're doing something. You're doing the polite thing, not raising and mounting an instruction, but you're voting with the system.
Or you're taking time out of your day, or you're breaking your daily habit, or you're dealing with a system that's frustrating. Like for me, the first time I did a mail-in ballot, I didn't read the instructions thoroughly because I just thought it was common sense. And the next thing you know, I missed one of the envelopes, and I read that my vote wasn't going to count because you got to mail in both envelopes, the inside one for the ballot that you sign the back of and date, and then the outside one, which has the stamp on it that you actually put the other one into mail. Now, why we have a two envelope system, that's kind of whatever. We could talk about that, but me not knowing, then I had to take the extra step and say, okay, so I wasted that time. Now I'm going to go to early voting. Early voting was great in that I was the only person in line. So that was great. It wasn't as close to me as my normal voting would have been. So, I spent a little bit of money on an Uber. It wasn't a big deal, but that's money that maybe some folks, uh, don't have, or maybe some folks don't want to hop on a bus during COVID time. But then when I get there, um, they only give me one sheet of paper uh, to vote with, and I kind of recognize like something's wrong here. I only have like the presidential votes. I don't have any of my local people that I want to vote for. So I go to the people who are supposed to be helping, and I have to go back and forth with them four times before they like relent, and like I tell them to get their supervisor. Um, and they're giving me every excuse from, oh, not everyone gets two pieces of paper depending on where you live, or it's different from year to year, or yada yada. And then supervisor comes over and they realize the printer had run out of paper, so they only printed me off one sheet. So they print me off my second sheet, and then I get to vote for everyone um, that I wanted to vote for. But I'm like, that happened to me, and I knew to like, resist what they're telling me. How many people are going to do that? How many people are going to go back and forth four times and say, no, I know something's wrong here? How many people are going to be like, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe it's different this year. Maybe there's no locals. Like, right? Because they're telling me this information as if they're confident of what they're saying, right? And the average person might trust them. So there's that. And then this so that was the primary. So when we get to the general, I did the mail-in thing. This time I did it correctly, read through it, made sure. I had my two envelopes. This time I had to provide my own stamp, which was different from the primary. It wasn't prepaid, so I had to provide my own stamp. Realize stamps, they can charge whatever they want to in a corner store, something I didn't realize. So I go in there and I have a quarter less than I need, but she just lets me, pay 50 cents instead of the 75 cents they were trying to charge. And after I put it in the mail, a couple of days after, I get a notice saying, sorry, a mistake was made on these ballots. You didn't have all the people you needed to vote for. So it was the same thing. Um, and this time I didn't catch it. though I thought something seemed a little bit off. And sure enough, there was a whole other page of people that I needed to vote for. So I had to go out and find a stamp again. Except this time, none of the places around me had stamps. They had run out of stamps. Um, and then the one place that did have a stamp wasn't accepting credit cards. They were only accepting cash, and I didn't have cash on me. And so I finally went to a place that I think had the stamps, and I was about to pull out my credit card and make sure I bought something else so that I could get to their minimum. A nice guy behind me said, "You're just getting a stamp," and he just like put down the change for me. So
Hmm.
like that's kind of a lot, and you can imagine maybe some young folks that are used to like the instant gratification of being able to tweet and like get their emotions and you know, get their conversation off and engage in the social media world might not like want to like, walk around the neighborhood looking for stamps and like dodging, the system screwing up every 10 steps and just say fuck it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, these are obstacles.
Yeah, and it's like you said earlier, older people are just, they're more stubborn in general, so they're more likely to want to endure all of that.
Yeah.
Cast one ballot.
Yep. The old person's probably going to be like, see, that's why I didn't want to do the mail in ballot in the first place. Or
Right.
that's why I didn't want to do early voting in the first place. Just do what I always do, and any little change, I'll be able to recognize it because all the other variables are the same.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we've got some work to do. We need to make things as easy as possible. I mean, I think at some point we should be able to vote online or like through our phones or whatever. We should make voting
Provided
easy.
that it's like totally hack proof. Yeah, I mean, I support the general idea of that.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not an IT expert. I'm just I'm a little bit pessimistic in how much technology can replace traditional ways of doing things. Um, but I think the system is or can be foolproofed. Then we should be, if anything, all voting should be done by mail. Uh,
yeah.
that way, it'd probably be cheaper, and
We
you
gotta
wouldn't
get
have people.
we gotta get to a point where we can figure out the technology. Even mail feels like a very antiquated system. And I mean the mail's good, and I think uh, you know the post office, like those are great jobs and everything, but the amount of time that it takes to count those votes and the amount of energy that goes into trying to see if someone drew outside of the circle or didn't fill in the bubble enough. I feel like even that's antiquated. You got to
Yeah,
get to like a system that's hack proof enough or works where we can like do it through our phones or do it through electronic means or something. Seems like there's got to be a way.
yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's encryption is the thing. Encryption is real. Though, they do say that at the end of the day, when it comes to like government stuff, they don't let you do it. That stuff online. They use you know, old school means so that stuff can't be hacked. Even like some of these systems that make you like fax them, like you try to do something with like a bank or you try to do something with some kind of payment and they're asking you to fax them something or send them something in the mail and it feels so antiquated, but I guess from their standpoint, it can't be hacked.
That's true.
So how do you feel about the next 4 years? Are you optimistic or?
Not really. I just don't even see the. I don't think the bare minimum would get through Congress. I mean, I thought that at the very least there'd be a public option. Not going to go into whether that's better than single payer, but I thought that we get something done there.
You mean
I
at this point before the change of change of power? You mean like at this point we'd already have
Yeah,
a public
because
option?
yeah, I just think that I mean the biggest obstacle obviously is the Senate, and it doesn't matter how moderate the Republican senator is. We're still going to get the same Mitch McConnell,
Hmm.
uh, and I don't think, like I said, chances are the Democrats won't win those Georgia runoffs. I mean, it's certainly possible they could pull off a miracle, but
You don't think Warnock's going to win?
Warnock could. I think he has a better chance of winning than Ossoff.
Hmm.
Um, Primarily because his opponent is weaker, but like I said, Biden barely scraped. I mean, it was an impressive win nonetheless, but he still barely scraped by only like I said, 12,000 votes or so. Uh, it's just really hard to depend on all those people to turn out again. I mean, the Democrats, I think, have a harder time getting people to turn out to vote for them than Republicans do. Republicans, at least as going as far back as I can remember. Hey, Joey.
Hey
Hey, what's up?
Joey, how's it going?
Dave? Pretty good, pretty good. How was your Thanksgivings?
Oh, Thanksgiving was pretty chill. I did a little Zoom with the family. Folks kind of zoomed from
It
all
was
over the
pretty
country.
solemn and quiet for me. For you guys know what.
Sorry, I wish I hadn't. I just remembered and felt bad. I'm sorry, man. Sorry I asked.
No, no, no. It was a solemn day. But I'm pretty much just using the long weekend to sleep for the most part. So, um, but
Understood. Yeah.
wasn't that bad.
I'll be right back. I'm just gonna grab something.
All right. So, where are you now?
I'm at a hotel that's government subsidized. I don't really know much about like how long I'm going to be here. All I know is I'm going to be here until I'm able to receive Social Security. That could take some time, so I'm kind of just working with the system. I'd rather not go too much into it, especially if this is going to be posted. But yeah.
Understood. I understand that. Okay, well, we can leave it at that then.
But I will say that at least I don't have an abusive landlord anymore. Put me and my mom in a literal shed.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I'm not. That would take an hour to explain, but overall, I'm in a better place than I was.
Understood. I mean, yeah, I mean, unfortunate circumstances, obviously that got you there. But I hope, I mean, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you're able to make it work.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm optimistic actually in that regard.
Good. So, any topics or any ideas either of you have for discussion?
Yeah, what was the last thing we were
Uh,
talking about?
we're
Oh,
talking about
sorry.
the Georgia runoff elections, which
Right.
are
Oh, cool.
scheduled. I think that's in late December, right?
I think yeah, first week of January actually. I'll check. First Tuesday of January, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So given Georgia, given its Republican DNA, um, and the fact that Biden barely scraped by in that state, and that Democrats seem to have, I don't know if you call it institutional, but they have a voter turnout problem, and Republicans. It seems like Republicans will go out and vote for anyone, but Democrats have to really work to get their voters out. I just don't see Democrats winning. Uh, as I was like Flavius, I believe that Warnock would be more favored to win than Ossoff because his opponent is much weaker than David Perdue.
Mhm.
But with that in mind, I'm not very optimistic for the next 4 years, because I just don't see much of anything being done because, like I was saying before, it doesn't matter how moderate the Republican senator is, they're still gonna, we're still gonna have the same guy in charge of the Senate, and McConnell's absolutely relentless. So there's not going to be anything even close to Medicare for all or Green New Deal or even a public option.
Um, sorry. I just wanted to say something quickly about the Georgia Senate race, and then I'll turn it back to you, Flav. Scott, I agree with a lot of your prognostication about the next 4 years, unfortunately. But in Georgia, I will say this: prior to this election, I would have agreed with your analysis. I mean, basically, prior to a month ago, I thought that Democrats might have a chance to win Georgia if there was a fair fight, but I read so many things about the voter suppression in the last gubernatorial race when Stacey Abrams was running against Kemp that I thought they had no chance. But now I actually am pleasantly surprised. They do seem to have a legit good voter turnout operation, and normally that on its own wouldn't be enough to sort of counteract the other factors you mentioned. But I do think that Democrats may have a better chance this year for a couple of reasons. To pick up the Senate seats for a couple of reasons. The first is that a lot of Republicans in the state have actually been threatening to boycott the process. I think they're pissed that the Republican Secretary of State certified the election, and they're starting to turn against the party because of their fanatical loyalty to Trump. Like I had a laugh when I was seeing that they were basically willing to sacrifice Senate control. So that's a factor, and that just combined, with the fact that Democrats kind of have the wind behind their backs right now to some extent. But I could be wrong. So I all of the factors you mentioned are still there too. So I'd say it's about 50-50.
Also, Abrams has really inspired people down there, and the registering of 800,000 people, most of them Democrats, is probably going to help whatever goes on there. But hopefully, that's a trend that we could encourage, is for Trump supporters to turn against other Democrats and sabotage themselves.
Yeah, other Republicans, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy on Atlas Forum who said that Fox News he basically canceled Fox News because they're no longer loyal to Trump. I said, wait, what? You got Tucker Carlson on defending Trump every night. You got Fox and Friends, Laura Ingraham.
Well, even there's a rift. There's actually a rift there, even with Carlson, because he didn't have like the lawyer challenging the election results on, and so now she has a personal beef against him. And I think some of the Trumpites are even turning against him now just because he hasn't towed the party line 100% of the time enough for them.
There is this weird idea that Fox News is not supporting Trump the way they're supposed to. I don't know how real that is.
Well, I mean, Sean Hannity was, he had Trump's left ear, so to speak. I read somewhere. I think this was about a year ago, but Sean Hannity was like an unofficial advisor to Trump. So a lot of what Trump did was, like I said, he just Sean Hannity would they would call it wasn't even on the show, but he would personally speak to Trump and tell him what to do. But again, that's just one. This is Atlas Forum. There are a lot of um, interesting people. I'll just say on there that go wonder about.
What you said about Sean Hannity is absolutely true. Like that actually made me think of an interview I heard years ago. This was 4 years ago in one of the first episodes of Chapo Trap House, where they had they had a reporter on who had just done a profile on Sean Hannity, and they basically argued that there are divisions at Fox News which some of us might not appreciate, but Sean Hannity is basically known as the ultimate Republican partisan. Like, I mean, this was a few years ago, so there's been some turnover since then. At the time, they said that, like, Glenn Beck was the Tea Party guy, so he would criticize the party establishment from the right. And then Bill O'Reilly was occasionally more moderate, like he acknowledged that he believed in climate change. But Sean Hannity his brand was basically just being the ultimate partisan hack, and he's like consistently been that. He was that during the Bush years, and he is for Trump now. So what you said, I actually legitimately think is plausible.
Yeah, I mean, especially when Trump did stuff that was kind of counterintuitive to his 2016 campaign. Like, I wonder who told Trump to appoint John Bolton, his advisor. I mean, because even I really want to say Trump is a dove, because he's really not. But he ran against the whole Jeb Bush foreign policy doctrine, the whole Bush foreign policy doctrine period in 2016, and then in I think around mid 2018, John Bolton is back in the White House, and I'm thinking, this is kind of. I mean, first of all, this is what I expected. Trump's not smart enough to be his own man. He's just going to be, a puppet, kind of in the same way that George W. Bush was a puppet of Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld. But Handy obviously has more. He has a longer reputation in Republican circles, so he had obviously a lot of influence. And Trump just with it.
Well, now they're saying Trump is eyeing his own station, like looking at his own, media station to like rival Fox News or something.
Yeah, like
he's had that iron in the fire for a while. Like in 2016, I remember when he thought he was going to lose the election at his election night party at the Hilton in Manhattan. There were TV cameras for Trump TV. So I think that's probably existed as an LLC since then. And now that he is out of office, he's probably create that as his own propaganda network going forward. And that to me is the one thing, just trying to look at politics from an objective perspective. I have a lot of cynicism about the Democrats and what they're going to be able to accomplish. But I also do think there is a legit possibility that the Republican infighting post Trump is going to be far worse than it ever was post Bush, and it could leave the GOP, hurting a lot worse. And the ironic thing is, post Bush, they were in a much weaker position. I mean, Democrats had the trifecta, and now the Republicans still control the Senate. But what I think could backfire severely is the infighting between Trump cultists and other like other wings of the party even. And I could almost, I don't even think a lot of the Trump cultists are necessarily blindly loyal Republicans. I mean, if someone like Tulsi Gabbard, ran as a Democrat in 2024, I could easily see some of the QAnon types crossing over for her, just because they don't. have a coherent ideology other than,
Right.
like, I mean, they're just delusional. So I think some interesting stuff could happen there. And obviously, I wouldn't welcome them in the Democratic Party. We already have enough problems with the
Right.
conservatives, but I see something like that as a possibility even.
And does Trump already have his own name for that network? Is it Trump Television? Is that
Trump,
what it's called? Trump
I think
TV?
Trump TV, yeah, I think.
Oh, okay. I was hoping it was going to be called like TNN.
Could be, yeah. I mean, that would be perfect. Although Trump pretty much just seems to be his universal brand. Yeah.
Or maybe like TNA.
Oh wait, shit!
Trump News Association.
It is Trump TV. It's TTV.
Yeah. See, that's yeah. I figured it was like three initials, something easy to remember.
Yeah.
TTV. Yep.
I mean, is that something you're officially launching, or is this just speculation?
Let's see.
That's so on brand with him, from like speculation to getting it out there. Maybe the T looks like a cross or something.
Yeah, I mean, especially since Trump, he there's a very good chance. I actually think it's higher than not that he could run in 2024.
Yeah.
Which will be on brand. And I looked through all the candidates, and I think who could be the, in a scenario where Trump does run again, who would be his strongest opposition. And the fact of the matter is, he's the most popular Republican president among his own base since Reagan.
Hey, do you guys want to do you guys want to do like a satirical news network called TNA?
Yeah, that would be hilarious. Let's do that. And maybe you could bring out your Black Republican character for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Character.
Yeah, well, it's so how Papa Bear for Colbert was
Bill O'Reilly.
Was Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
So like
right.
my Papa Bear is Richard, what's his name?
Clark.
Yeah, Richard Clark, the former sheriff
of Milwaukee.
Yeah,
like America's toughest cop. He was known as.
Yeah.
Isn't he?
Yeah.
Isn't that guy a Democrat? For some reason, he was registered as
Oh
a Democrat.
no, I don't know what his past is, but he's certainly not a Democrat, and he's certainly like a Trump lover.
Yeah, a lot of people just have and like have party affiliations that don't really reflect their politics. Like it could just be that Milwaukee is overwhelmingly Democrat, so conservatives have to register as Democrats there if they want any influence.
That's true, but I mean, Michael Flynn, I think to this day is a Democrat.
Yeah.
For some reason, but yeah, you probably do have a point on if he was the sheriff of Milwaukee. Right, I might be confusing him with someone else, but there's another sheriff. I think. I don't know if he was a Republican or a Democrat, but he was certainly very conservative. He was like Black Joe Arpaio.
Oh, wait a minute. So, okay, so it says Clark declared himself as Democrat after his appointment as sheriff and ran as a Democrat in a heavily Democratic county. Though many of his political views align with those of conservative Republicans, he refused to join the Wisconsin Democratic Party, instead promoting conservative views and aligning himself with Republican officials. So, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah,
I guess he has a lot of weird. Yeah, he's weird. But this picture of him, you won't be able to see it, but it's so great. He's got the black cowboy hat on. He's smiling for once, and he's got a Tucker Carlson-esque bow tie on. He's got his initials. He's got like a gold C in his hat.
Hey, maybe maybe when we release this video, and I could try to help out with this, we could just like put up a graphic of him for in that moment and just edit it in so the audience can see what you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah. If you can do that, that would be great.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. I've been wanting to download and teach myself Final Cut Pro anyway, so that this would be a good practice for me. If I can find a version I can download on my PC for not too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like want to get into, character, and like I definitely need one of these hats, one of these Texas style, gallon hats he has, and rock the suit jacket. And now that I see that he has a bow tie, that's like a new one. I think usually it's maybe no tie or even
Yeah.
like the bowler tie or whatever they call it with the strings. But he's quite the character.
Yeah. And bow ties are such particularly, like, I mean, I think there's probably some reactionary, like trad Catholic types that are into bow ties too, but it also seems to be a thing I've seen a lot among libertarians. Like I've seen pictures of like a libertarian, like some libertarian conferences where like everyone seems to be wearing bow ties. I mean, that just is a very like crank, conservatarian type signifier, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know why, but it is.
Probably started with Murray Rothbard, who is like one of the godfathers of libertarianism, who wore a bow tie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right. He did.
Yeah. Like maybe the bow tie is supposed to symbolize government that we can strangle in small enough to strangle in a bow tie or something.
You had something.
I think Friedman did the same thing.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And then I was associated with Tucker Carlson for a long time.
Yeah. I wonder how quickly he stopped that. I wonder if it was right after that famous moment where Jon Stewart went on with him and Paul Begala and just mocked it mercilessly. Like he asked Tucker Carlson, "How old are you? 35? You're 35 and you still wear a bow tie?"
What was his response to that?
I don't know. I think he was just kind of homina, and he was just stuttering. He couldn't come up with a response. And then Jon Stewart was like, "No, that's all right. I mean, it's a difficult thing to tie. I give you credit for making the effort."
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's like maybe it's supposed to be like a rich thing. Like it shows you got some class or some money or something.
Yeah.
Southern gentleman kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's abandoned. I mean, I don't know when he abandoned it, but he definitely would be wanting to abandon it now with his current kind of populist brand.
Right.
But yeah, someday we'll look back. We'll look back, and if Tucker Carlson does become like a fascist dictator, we'll look back and say it's all because Jon Stewart made fun of him that he became a fascist, and that was the moment where everything went downhill.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's the case, let them rock the bow ties then. If that's
Totally.
The last thing, if that's the spell that's keeping them in check.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we're going to be able to get things done in the next 4 years and like hold Biden and Kamala accountable. It seems like the left is still like together in that mission. I mean, I've seen Bernie and AOC come out with strong statements and fighting back against people who are like talking shit about leftists trying to get things done.
Yeah, I think I think that they're going to definitely have to stay on top of that because there are going to be efforts to sabotage leftists in the primary and everywhere. But one thing I do think is good this election is that ever so slowly the number of progressive and DSA members and the percentage of the Democratic caucus that they represent is growing. Like the Squad added Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. I think in 2022, there's more opportunities to knock off establishment Democrats in primaries. Just pick some of the worst establishment Democrats in solid districts where all the candidate needs to do is win the nomination. And I think that in that sense, even if Democrats suffer congressional losses in 2022 and 2024, the percentage of the party that the left represents will continue to increase, especially since they represent seats that are far safer than most of the seats that the centrists represent. Like, so like if like Gil Cizernos and Harley Rhoda, who are the worst like ex-Republican entryists that held seats in California and like Orange County and this other conservative district, they both lost their seats this year, and Democrats are still able to hold a majority. And in 2 years' time, in a midterm in which Republicans gained, in which I still don't think would be a good thing, don't get me wrong, obviously, but if Republicans lost seats, the left will gain, and the left will gain in 2024, whether Democrats win or lose. So I think I'm disappointed that Bernie lost because I think that what it shows is that we're going to have to play a much longer game. But I do think based on these long-term trends, the left will take control of the party eventually. It's just, it might take too long, unfortunately, to do what we need to do about things like climate change.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. So I think the power move we have to make is like, what can we do about 2024? And I know some people don't like thinking about that because we just got to 2020, but like you said, we want to take control of things as soon as possible because climate change is definitely just ticking, and that's like the ticking time bomb. And centrists left to their own devices are not going to get it done.
I completely agree. And the candidate I've actually been pushing a lot is Ro Khanna because he's pretty solidly progressive and anti-war, and he was one of Bernie's best surrogates. I think I've seen a lot of people pushing for AOC to run. I don't think you should always push for the movement figure to be the nominee. I think she's good in Congress, and she's already kind of been sort of demonized by the right so much that I don't know how strong of a candidate she would be in a national election. But Ro Khanna is great. I mean, he's on board with Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. And
where's he out of?
He's out of Silicon Valley in Northern California. I mean, that's another interesting thing about him is that he is he's a millionaire, so he would probably self-finance his campaign, which I mean isn't a good thing in and of itself. I'm not the type to push businessmen, but I think he's talked a lot about how Silicon Valley has screwed over America and has automated a lot of people out of work. And he and he's reached out. He's talked about creating job programs in places like Appalachia even. And I think he's the type of person who potentially could be like a modern day FDR. Like he would be known as a traitor to his class in the same way, like his class of Silicon Valley plutocrats. And also
he looks pretty young too.
Yeah, he would be the first Asian American president. He would be the Asian American JFK or Obama, and with Bernie's politics. I mean, I think that's an ideal combination.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, he's 44 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, AOC could run for president in 40 years, and she would still be younger than Joe Biden is now.
I saw that. That's incredible.
That's intense.
So she has plenty of time. I think the biggest challenge is I think New York is expected to lose what 2 House seats after the census.
Yeah.
The question is, are they going to try to draw her out? And if they do, and she has to run against someone like I think her name's Carolyn Maloney. Does she live in like the next?
Yeah, Carolyn Maloney.
I mean, she's been if they were to run against each other in a primary, I mean, Carolyn Maloney has been there since she's been there for 20 years, I think in Congress. Um, I don't know if AOC is established enough to survive a primary, but I think that's the next question, and then she can just gain seniority for how many years, and then maybe when the country is more amenable to her policies, then she seems a good chance of winning.
I mean, I think that I think that that's a good point. I hadn't thought about the congressional redistricting, and I think that AOC potentially could also run for senator or governor in that case, like either against Cuomo in the primary or against Schumer. And one other small point I want to respond to, Scott, is that you said maybe when the country is more amenable to AOC's policies. I don't think her policies are the issue. I think you can have 2 candidates who have identical policies and one is stronger than the other. I think it's the fact that she's been in the spotlight and has been demonized so much by Fox News. I mean, a solid majority of the country supports Medicare for all. People support raising the minimum wage. I mean, look at how it passed in Florida. The problem to me is that Democrats don't campaign on those issues. They don't make them front and center. I mean, I think part of the reason Trump was able to make gains among working class voters this election, working class voters of all races, even as he lost in general, is because the argument was between Biden, who said we have to go back to lockdowns, and he's correct about that, and Trump, who said no lockdowns, I'm going to reopen the economy. I mean, against a left populist candidate who said, no, this guy wants to murder you for the sake of Wall Street. I'm going to give you a monthly check and forgive all your rent and mortgage payments so you don't have to be sacrificed at the altar of capital, would have been a hell of a lot more popular with working class voters. I mean, you wouldn't have seen the sort of losses Democrats suffered in South Texas, in areas in counties that have been Democrat forever this election. So I think it depends on who the messenger is and how the message is presented, not so much the message itself. And that was my only concern about AOC as a national candidate.
Well, maybe it's our politics that I'm just worried about, but AOC's getting the same treatment that Hillary Clinton did.
Exactly, yeah.
So it could come down to identity politics. The inherent biases that AOC would face simply for being a Hispanic woman. But turn Fox News and you just hear about AOC. So they're demonizing her, and that could hurt her long term. And especially if she gets fucked over by Democrats in her own state, then she obviously doesn't have much of a future there. Either.
Yeah,
I think she's able to
clarify, because I just wanted to clarify that point, because I do agree with you about that. I just wanted to clarify that it's not the politics themselves that I think are the issue with her, and it's why I'm pushing for someone like Ro Khanna, who's currently less known and Fox hasn't had a chance to demonize yet. But Flavius, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, well, I just think that AOC is able to deliver her message, in a strong way that people like to hear. She's got like a lot of power, and she's able to like deliver a simple message with like a lot of flavor and charisma. And I'm hoping that like, in those instances of showing a contrast, like, look, I'm going to push for, $2,000 a month for folks instead of like leaving folks out to dry in this COVID economy. And, I'm pushing for, $15 an hour at the bare minimum, but really pushing for a living wage. And, I believe in like, housing for all and all this stuff. Like, I'm hoping that the same way she's carried herself, she'd be able to, in a presidential election, like taking advantage of her like rising star situation. Like, obviously, ideally, Democrats usually want more experience, but maybe like we have to like change up the rules a little bit and like play to some of our strengths and like take the playbook from
Yeah.
the other side a little bit and just like put someone out there who's like capable and who can win and who
And
has
really
it.
not always. I mean, Obama, that was, one of the arguments that was made against him in 08, and and it didn't work. So I think a Democrat without too much experience could potentially get through.
Yeah, I mean, he had a little bit more. He had been he had been a
Right.
a state senator before. He was only U.S. senator for a few years, but he was state senator for a good 6 years or
That's
however
true.
many. But it's still only like a total of 8 to however many years. So it's not much more, but it is something.
That's true. Yeah.
But he was I heard stories about him early on, like later on I heard some of those early stories about people listening to him speak one time and saying, like, making predictions like this guy is going to be like the next president, just based on that level of charisma. And
Oh yeah.
that's like what we need, like we're getting better, but we need someone who's just like, we need like a superstar status,
Yeah.
but someone who's like that, but like way to the left.
Yeah.
Like,
Who can? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've always said. JFK and Obama in charisma, but Bernie in politics.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it's going to take to get people to the good old fashioned. I want to sit down and have a beer with them. I like them. I'm chummy with them. Like, get people to fall in love with you. The old Clinton,
Yeah.
level charisma. He's up there with JFK and Obama as well.
Definitely. Yeah.
But even though AOC's policies might be popular, she's still, I think, underperformed Biden pretty significantly on her own district. So maybe, maybe they can't be chalked up so much to ideology or policy, but she
Wait, you
has
said she
done, like I said,
outperformed? You said she performed well in her own district?
underperformed. She
Oh,
actually didn't.
underperformed.
She
Oh, okay.
didn't. Yeah, the members of the squad all they all represent favorable districts to Democrats, but I mean, I know that Ilhan Omar only won by like over 60% in her district. So there's still there's still a lot of resistance, I think, to progressives. How much that boil down to policy versus other stuff, I can't say for sure, but
Well, they were also underdogs to incumbents in their area too.
What's that?
Well, initially, but I think Scott's talking about this election when they were incumbents.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying initially that they were like underdogs in their area.
Well,
in the primary, yeah, AOC definitely. I don't know if Ilhan Omar was running against an incumbent in the primary.
She wasn't. She was running to That was Keith Ellison's seat that she now has.
Right. Oh yeah, I remember the scandal with Keith Ellison. I mean, I think
So we're coming
scandals-
up to time. Are we going to continue, or what are folks into?
I'm down to continue.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
continue.
All right, cool.
All right,
So yeah, we got another minute.
great. Yeah, I like this because this is like the first real just pure political prognostication politics show that we've done. I mean, maybe this could be a recurring feature with just the three of us, since nobody
Yeah.
else that's regular on the show is a political junkie to the extent that Flav and I am. So it's good to have you on board here too.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad I could be on here after months of talking about it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, Scott, thanks for joining as we're winding up the first session. Yeah, this is the Let's Get Serious show, hosted by myself, Flavius Maximus. Joey's been on many times so far, so thanks for joining us for your first time. Anything you want to say to wrap up the session, or?
No,
Yeah.
I think I've covered it all. You go right ahead.
Just on AOC is you also have to keep in mind what would be at stake if she were to opt not to run for her House seat. I mean, I think she can run in her House seat, and well, maybe she can. Actually, I'm